Just so you know, while that everybody was gawking at Miley Cyrus, the US and the UK basically declared war on Syria. For over a year now, the United States has been talking about military intervention in the nation of Syria. They've said over and over again that the use of chemical weapons would be the tipping point at which they would become militarily involved. And by that they mean chemical weapon use by the government of Bashar al-Assad, which isn't using them. In truth, the US, the UK, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, Israel, all these countries have been funding the FSA, giving them war materials, sending them money and whatnot. US President Barack Obama publicly comes out in support of the FSA, goes to Congress, asks for money to send them, and yet still the public somehow believes that it's just a small rebel group working by itself and not a part of US imperialism. The US is involved. Yet these same people turn around and they adamantly claim, no, we're not involved. The West has repeatedly claimed that the FSA are these poor people that are being oppressed by the evil Bashar al-Assad, and that these are true righteous people standing up for their rights against the tyranny. Yet let's look at the actual facts around that. The FSA have abducted and raped a female Al Jazeera reporter. They take children and force them to be soldiers. They take children and force them to conduct executions. They abducted a civilian, killed him, and then barbecued his head. They've bombed Aleppo University. They've attempted to shoot down civilian aircraft, a 747, and they unceasingly murder civilians in untold numbers. Every single one of these people that has died in this conflict that has gone on for more than a year is directly on the hands of US and UK imperialism. And one of the reasons why this hasn't broken into an outright war between the US, the UK, and Syria is the fact that two members of the UN Security Council, Russia and China, have vetoed all of their actions. The US has repeatedly insisted, said that it's all but certain that the government of Bashar al-Assad has used chemical weapons. Yet the UN reports keep coming back. There is no evidence the Syrian government has used any chemical weapons. Yet everything short of absolute proof that the FSA has used chemical weapons. In fact, this has gotten completely out of control to the point where now when the chemical weapons inspectors were inside the country, the FSA launched a chemical attack right near where they were. And then when the footage got to the UN inspectors, they thought it seemed strange. There were irregularities in the symptoms among people. There were wild accounts of 1,200 people being killed, and then it was a couple hundred, and then it was a few dozen. On top of that, when the inspectors went to go to the place where it alleged to have happened, they were shot at by FSA snipers. Tell me again, who's the good guy and who's the bad guy? The government, which is being attacked, and the population, which is being attacked by the rebels? The people using chemical weapons on the people, which are mostly foreign-backed mercenaries anyway, many of them turning out to be Al-Qaeda. Come on, think about this. The American public is being willfully ignorant at this point. The UN has said there is no evidence whatsoever that the government of Bashar al-Assad has used chemical weapons. They keep coming back with mountains of evidence that the rebels actually have used them. So they continually go on to denounce the Bashar al-Assad regime for doing supposedly what the FSA, the US-backed terrorist group, is actually doing. It is now at the point where Turkey, who has been supporting what has been happening in Syria, has now reported finding chemical weapon stashes of FSA supporters inside of Turkey. It has now been revealed through reports that the US had given the green light and the support for the FSA to do a false flag attack against the Syrian government, to go ahead and use chemical weapon attack, and then blame it on the Syrian government. Is this the first time the US has used chemical weapon attacks? No. Take a look at the depleted uranium in Iraq. Take a look at Agent Orange in Vietnam. And then take a look at this prime example. The fact that it has recently come out that the U.S. gave the blessing for Saddam Hussein to use chemical weapons against Iran. These are the beasts of imperialism that Che Guevara warned us about. Now, he spoke about how imperialism turns men into beasts that don't care about human life, that go around and savagely kill.
Eso nos indica a nosotros dos cosas. Primero, la bestialidad imperialista. Bestialidad que no tiene una frontera determinada ni pertenece a un país determinado. Bestias fueron las hordas hitleristas, como bestias son los norteamericanos hoy, como bestias son los paracaidistas belgas, como bestias fueron los imperialistas franceses en Argelia. Porque es la naturaleza del imperialismo la que bestializa a los hombres, la que la convierte en fieras sedientas de sangre que están dispuestas a degollar, a asesinar, a destruir hasta la última imagen de un revolucionario, de un partidario de un régimen que haya caído bajo su bota o que luche por su libertad.
Now, on top of this, at this very moment, there are U.S. warships on their way to Syria, which by the time this recording is made public are probably there by now. Last Monday it was announced that they were beginning their journey. In fact, experts have been saying most likely what's going to happen is there's going to be some kind of tomahawk strike like there was from the USS Syria against Libya back when that whole conflict was still going on with U.S. interference, which by the way looks suspiciously a lot like what's going on right now, because it's exactly the same thing. Imperialism is at its point right now where it's so desperate to grab new markets, to hold on existing ones, that they have reached their limits within low-level, what's called low-level warfare, by supporting militant groups inside of a country. Even to the point of bringing in soldiers for them to fight with, because in often cases they literally don't exist. Imperialism now has to step forward, and Barack Obama has to finally take off his Nobel Peace Prize mask, the President of Peace garbage that we were fed right when he was elected. I never fell for it. I said specifically nothing was going to change. And a lot of comrades said nothing was going to change, but everybody had this whole gleam of hope and change that was going to come, and I called those people idiots at the time. Yeah, I was right, along with everybody else who knows how capitalism works, that nothing was going to change. Finally, it has to be made clear that the Obama administration has lied from the beginning about Syria. They have lied about chemical weapons. They have lied about civilian masters. They have lied about how things actually operate inside the country. Now, finally, even the most dim-witted, blind, and just plain ignorant have to acknowledge what's going on now. What we are facing right now is the increasing decline of global capitalism. As the system becomes desperate to be able to grab more and more resources and more spheres of influence, we see once again we have to go to war. And once again, just like with every other crisis of capitalism, it's the third world who has to suffer the most. When there's shortages of food, the third world suffers. When there's shortages of water, the third world suffers. When we have to go to war, it's the third world that suffers. And this is the same repeated pattern that we have seen over and over again. The third world is the whipping dog, the one that are taking the brunt of all of this unbelievable failure of capitalism and its continuous drive for war. We are in a further situation right now where the people of the third world, we are in a situation right now more so than ever where the people of the third world have no choice but to rise up against the first world in order for themselves just to survive. Every time these things happen, the majority of the population in the first world cheers these things on, or they just don't care, or they just become total patriotic freaks and just pound the war drums every time this happens. Combine this warlike mentality with people just not caring. And you have literally a population that serves no productive purpose whatsoever for the maintenance or even the survival or defense of the third world. And this definitely shows once again that the people of the third world have to rise up and defend themselves. And the only way they can do that is by ending imperialism. And the only way they can do that is by literally destroying the war mechanism of the United States. It has to step up and fight the first world in order for them just to survive. Meanwhile, we've got all these useless first world people that are sitting there getting angry or happy or defending what Miley Cyrus did at the Video Music Awards, whether right or wrong in whatever context you want to put it in. They're paying attention to this and not the mass murder of the third world that's being carried out by the people they give tax money to, whose their name they do it in. And too many other people are too busy celebrating Max Brooks' World War Z. They're too busy self-glorifying themselves in these little fantasies of being the heroes in this total terrible war. While in the meantime, they are passive bystanders in the actual wars that really exist in real life that are destroying and murdering the people of the third world. The people of the third world have no choice any longer but to stand up and defend themselves from the first world. Either the first world bestial mentality that comes from imperialism, or just the straight out ambivalence that's perpetuated by capitalist culture, just not caring about what happens. The people of Syria are one of those groups of people that has no choice but to rise up. Of course, they have to take care of the primary contradiction of imperialism in their country, and then the primary contradiction after that of imperialism in the world. They don't have a choice. The useless populations of the West, the UK, Canada, Australia, and everyone else is doing nothing. I said they're either pounding the war drum or they're standing there like useless liberals, not doing anything to stop this whatsoever. The people of the third world don't have a choice. They have to rise up. This proves true what has been said so many times. Long live global people's war.